There's something subtle that ruins more dreams than failure ever could. Something invisible, quiet, and persistent. It doesn't shout, it doesn't warn you. It simply works in the shadows, whispering just enough doubt to make you hesitate. That silent enemy is insecurity. Insecurity doesn't show up as fear alone. It hides beneath your excuses. It lives inside every moment you tell yourself, I'm not ready yet. It's there when you compare yourself to others and come up short. It's there when you stop yourself from trying, because deep down you don't believe you deserve to win. It convinces you that staying small is safer than standing out. That fitting in is wiser than being yourself. That comfort is better than courage. And so, without realizing it, people build entire lives around their insecurities. They choose jobs they don't love because risk feels frightening. They settle in relationships that drain them because loneliness feels worse. They hide their true thoughts, their real talents, their wildest ambitions, because somewhere along the way, they decided that being accepted mattered more than being alive. The world is filled with people who could have been great but weren't, not because they lacked intelligence or opportunity or talent, but because they lacked belief, because they let insecurity take command of their minds. Every human being carries some insecurity. The difference between those who rise and those who remain stuck lies in what they do with it. The successful do not escape insecurity. They outgrow it. They confront it. They replace it with understanding, with self-respect, with a calm, steady conviction that they are enough. Understand this: no one else is holding you back. The barrier between you and the life you want is not the world. It's the voice within that keeps you small. You may think that your insecurity protects you from rejection, but in truth, it only guarantees it, because the person who doubts themselves is already half defeated. Confidence isn't arrogance. It isn't loud. True confidence is quiet. It's the inner knowing that you can handle whatever happens. It's realizing that you don't need to prove yourself, only to express yourself fully. The moment you stop comparing, you start growing. The moment you stop apologizing for who you are, you begin to attract everything meant for you. And the day you decide that you're worthy of more, that day everything changes. Because life doesn't respond to insecurity. It responds to certainty. It bends to the person who knows what they want and believes they deserve it. If you want to change your life, start by changing what you think you're capable of. Let go of the belief that you're not enough, and you'll see that you always were. There's something subtle that ruins more dreams than failure ever could. Something invisible, quiet, and persistent. It doesn't shout. It doesn't warn you. It simply works in the shadows, whispering just enough doubt to make you hesitate, to make you question, to make you pause when life needs you to move. That silent enemy is insecurity, and it is one of the most destructive forces in the human experience. It begins as a small thought, a hesitation before speaking up, a comparison when looking at someone else's success, a quiet voice that says you're not ready, not capable, not enough. And though small, it grows with every time you choose comfort over courage, with every time you decide not to try because you're afraid to fail, with every time you pretend to be less than you are so others feel more comfortable around you. Insecurity doesn't destroy all at once. It's a slow decay. It eats at your potential in silence, shaping your choices without your awareness. You convince yourself you're being rational when really you're being restrained. You tell yourself you're being careful when you're really just being afraid. You take pride in playing it safe, not realizing that safety, when born from fear, is just another word for surrender. Insecurity builds invisible walls around your life, not to keep the world out, but to keep you in. And the tragedy is that most people will live their entire lives within those walls, never realizing that the gate was open the whole time. It's not that they lack ability. The world is filled with people who could have been extraordinary, who had ideas that could have changed the world, voices that could have inspired millions, talents that could have reshaped industries. But they never saw themselves that way. They didn't believe they were the kind of person who could make an impact, and so they didn't. They stayed in the background, waiting for permission that would never come. Insecurity convinced them to wait until they were ready, until they were perfect, until they had more experience, more confidence, more proof. But readiness never arrives when you're waiting for it. It comes when you decide to move despite your insecurity. You see, the people who achieve great things are not free of insecurity. They simply refuse to let it control them. They feel the same fear, the same doubt, but they walk forward anyway. They replace hesitation with faith, faith not in luck, not in circumstances, but in their ability to figure things out as they go. And that faith, once it takes root, grows stronger than insecurity could ever be. It becomes a quiet power, a sense of inner steadiness that doesn't need validation or approval. But insecurity thrives on comparison. It feeds on the illusion that others are ahead, that others are better, that others are more deserving. It tricks you into thinking life is a competition when it's really a creation. You start to chase what others have instead of building what's meant for you. You scroll through lives that look perfect and forget that every person you admire once stood exactly where you are now, uncertain, unseen, and afraid. The only difference is that they stopped letting insecurity write their story. The moment you stop comparing yourself to others, something changes. You begin to notice your own progress. You start to appreciate how far you've come instead of how far you have to go. You begin to create not from fear of judgment, but from love of expression. You stop trying to be accepted, and instead, you begin to be authentic. And authenticity is the one thing insecurity cannot survive. Because when you truly accept yourself, when you understand that your worth was never up for debate, insecurity loses its foundation. It has nowhere left to hide. The voice that once said you can't becomes quieter. The hesitation that once held you back becomes shorter. And what remains is a calm knowing that you are enough, that you always were, that you never needed to prove your value to anyone. When you reach that point, you don't need to chase validation anymore because you realize the only approval that ever mattered was your own. Insecurity doesn't always appear as weakness. Often, it wears the mask of humility, of caution, of realism. It disguises itself as reason, convincing you that you're just being practical when you step back from opportunity, that you're being responsible when you stay silent, that you're being mature when you accept less than you deserve. It's clever, subtle, and patient. It doesn't destroy your life with one big mistake. It does it quietly, through a lifetime of hesitation. It's in the job you didn't apply for, the idea you didn't share, the chance you didn't take, the dream you slowly talked yourself out of. And the saddest part is that you don't realize it's happening until years later, when you look back and see all the moments fear disguised as logic held you still. Insecurity whispers, "Wait until you're ready." But readiness is a myth created by fear. No one is ever fully ready. The ones who move forward aren't braver. They've simply decided that their future matters more than their comfort. Insecurity convinces you to seek certainty before action. But certainty never comes before you take the first step. Growth demands faith, faith in your ability to learn, to adapt, to rise when things don't go as planned. Every time you hesitate because you don't feel ready, you give insecurity more power. Every time you delay, you teach your mind that fear should make the decisions. It's important to understand that insecurity isn't about lacking confidence in everything. You can be confident in one area of your life and deeply insecure in another. You might be sure of your abilities at work, but unsure of your worth in relationships. You might appear strong to the world, but question your value in silence. Insecurity is selective, and it finds the cracks in your self-image, the areas where you've been hurt or judged before, and it keeps replaying those memories to remind you of your limitations. It wants you to believe that your past defines you, that one failure is proof you'll fail again. But the truth is, insecurity only has power when you mistake its voice for truth. You see, insecurity thrives in comparison. It grows every time you measure your progress by someone else's timeline. You see someone younger, more successful, more confident, and you assume they have something you don't. You forget that people only show the parts of their life they want the world to see. You compare your behind, the scenes, with someone else's highlight reel and wonder why you don't measure up. But no one wins the comparison game. Even the people you envy are comparing themselves to someone else. It's endless, empty, and destructive. The only person you should compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. Insecurity also feeds on perfectionism. It convinces you that unless something is flawless, it's not worth doing. You rewrite, overthink, delay, and polish, not realizing that perfection isn't progress. The pursuit of perfect is often a disguise for the fear of judgment. You think if you make it perfect, no one can criticize it. But the truth is, no matter how perfect something is, someone will still find fault. When you learn to create despite imperfection, when you move forward even when you're unsure, you begin to free yourself from insecurity's control. Insecurity teaches you to seek approval before action. It makes you believe that validation must come before belief in yourself. But waiting for others to confirm your worth is like standing in the rain, hoping someone else will hand you an umbrella. The only person who can give you lasting confidence is you. When you stop needing permission to be who you are, insecurity begins to lose its hold. You start realizing that confidence isn't something you find, it's something you decide. You decide to trust yourself, to accept that mistakes are part of growth, and to understand that your value doesn't depend on anyone's opinion. It's not arrogance to believe in yourself. It's self-respect. It's not pride to think you're capable. It's clarity. When you stop letting insecurity write the rules of your life, you stop living as a reaction to fear and start living as a reflection of purpose. And that shift, quiet and internal, changes everything you touch. Every human being carries some form of insecurity. It doesn't matter how successful, talented, or admired a person becomes. Somewhere beneath the surface, there's a part of them that doubts, that questions, that fears being not enough. Insecurity is part of being human, but what separates those who rise from those who remain stuck is how they respond to it. Some let insecurity guide every decision they make, while others learn to see it for what it truly is, a signal that growth is near. The difference lies not in the feeling itself, but in the meaning you assign to it. When insecurity tells one person, "You can't," they stop. When it tells another, "You're afraid," they move anyway. The people who create, who build, who inspire don't do so because they are free from doubt. They do it in spite of it. They have learned that courage is not the absence of insecurity. It is the mastery of it. They've learned that confidence is not a natural state that arrives one day. It's a discipline built one decision at a time. Each time you act while afraid, you weaken insecurity's hold. Each time you speak up despite your trembling voice, you teach your mind that fear isn't fatal. Each time you move forward when you don't feel ready, you expand the limits of what you believe is possible. Growth always begins where comfort ends, and insecurity is the gatekeeper that tests your resolve. Insecurity often disguises itself as logic, telling you to wait until you have more evidence, more skill, more validation. But logic without courage becomes limitation. If you look back at the great moments of progress in your life, you'll realize most of them began before you were ready. You said yes to opportunities you didn't fully understand. You took steps into uncertainty. You learned by doing, not by waiting. Yet over time, the older you get, the more careful you become. You start valuing certainty over discovery, predictability over progress, and slowly, without realizing it, you begin to trade potential for security. But security born from insecurity is just another name for fear. It's comfort dressed as wisdom, and it will cost you everything your spirit truly desires. The truth is, no one else is holding you back. The world will always have challenges, competition, and critics, but the most powerful force shaping your destiny is not external. It's internal. It's the dialogue you have with yourself every day. When that dialogue is driven by insecurity, even opportunity feels like a threat. You talk yourself out of possibilities before you even begin. You see problems where others see openings. You shrink your dreams to fit your comfort zone, not realizing that your comfort zone is just a cage made of your own thoughts. To overcome insecurity, you must stop fighting it and start understanding it. It's not your enemy, it's a messenger. It reveals where you lack trust in yourself. It points to the areas where you've yet to forgive yourself for past mistakes. It reminds you of the beliefs you've inherited from others, beliefs that never belonged to you in the first place. Every time insecurity speaks, it's giving you a map to where your self-work lies. If you listen not with fear but with awareness, you'll find that insecurity loses its power the moment you stop resisting it. Confidence isn't something that suddenly appears. It's built through repetition, through showing up even when you doubt your own strength. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, your mind begins to trust you more. Each time you finish what you start, you plant the seeds of self-respect. Confidence is the reward of consistent integrity, doing what you said you'd do long after the feeling of motivation is gone. And once you begin to trust yourself, insecurity fades into the background. It no longer controls your choices, it merely becomes a passing thought. You start to realize that everyone is figuring it out as they go, that nobody truly has it all together. And that's the quiet freedom that allows you to move without fear. Insecurity convinces you that staying small is safer than standing out. It makes you believe that blending in will protect you from judgment, that silence will protect you from rejection, and that playing it safe will keep you from failure. But what it truly does is rob you of the very experiences that would have made you grow. It takes your natural desire to expand, to explore, to express, and slowly replaces it with the need to be accepted. And in chasing acceptance, you lose authenticity. You start editing yourself, toning down your voice, hiding your ideas, softening your ambition just to make others comfortable. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're only burying who you really are. The tragedy of insecurity is that it promises safety but delivers regret. You spend years walking carefully, avoiding risks, pleasing others, seeking approval, and then one day you realize you've built a life that doesn't feel like your own. You've followed rules that no one actually made, carried expectations that were never truly yours, and lived according to a script written by fear. And when you look back, the pain isn't from what you did wrong, but from what you never allowed yourself to do at all. Insecurity steals your courage one hesitation at a time until you forget what bravery even feels like. It's not that insecurity destroys ambition completely. It simply redirects it. Instead of working to become your best self, you start working to become someone else's idea of success. You chase achievements that look impressive but feel empty. You follow paths that are popular but not purposeful. You measure your worth through other people's opinions, forgetting that their approval has never once changed your potential. The more you try to prove yourself, the more insecure you feel, because proof can never create peace. The moment you need validation to feel valuable, you hand your power away. At the heart of insecurity is comparison. It's the quiet habit of measuring your beginning against someone else's middle. You're behind the scenes against their highlight reel. You scroll, you watch, you compare, and without realizing it, you start believing that everyone else is moving faster, doing better, living more fully than you are. But comparison blinds you to your own progress. It keeps you focused on what's missing instead of what's growing. The truth is, you can't become yourself while trying to be someone else. The energy you spend envying others could be building something uniquely your own. Every time you look outward for worth, you lose sight of your inner power. The moment you decide to stop competing, you create space to start creating. You begin to see that your path is not meant to mirror anyone else's, and your timeline is not running late. There is no universal schedule for success, no perfect age for achievement, no single way to live a fulfilling life. Insecurity tries to convince you that you're behind, but behind compared to what? Behind compared to who? The truth is, you're only behind when you stop moving. To break free from insecurity, you have to stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what will I become if I keep shrinking? You have to choose authenticity over acceptance, progress over perfection, purpose over approval. Confidence doesn't come from being applauded by others. It comes from being aligned with yourself. It's born when your actions match your truth, when your words reflect your values, when your life begins to feel like your own. And that's the shift insecurity fears the most, because once you begin to live from self-respect instead of self-doubt, it can no longer control you. You stop waiting for the world to see your worth and start acting like you already know it. Confidence isn't arrogance, and it isn't loud. It's not the person who talks the most or stands in the spotlight that holds real confidence. True confidence is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It doesn't need to announce itself or prove anything. It simply exists as a calm knowing, a certainty that you can handle whatever life brings. It's the understanding that you don't need to be perfect to be worthy, that you don't need to know everything to begin, and that failure doesn't define you, it refines you. Confidence isn't a performance, it's a presence. It's being at peace with who you are, not because you've never stumbled, but because you've learned that every stumble taught you something valuable about your own strength. Insecurity thrives on noise. It needs constant reassurance to survive. It seeks validation in every conversation, approval in every interaction, and applause in every achievement. But confidence doesn't depend on the outside world. It doesn't need to be noticed to feel real. It grows in silence in those private moments when you keep promises to yourself, when you choose discipline over doubt, when you show up even when no one's watching. It's the quiet victories that build unshakable belief, not the praise of others. You begin to understand that what you think of yourself is far more powerful than what anyone else thinks of you. Confidence doesn't mean you always feel good about yourself. It means you trust yourself even when you don't. It means you can face uncertainty without being paralyzed by it. You know that you've made it through difficult moments before, and you'll make it through again. It's built through repetition, through small, consistent acts of courage that slowly replace fear with faith. Each time you take action despite insecurity, you rewire your mind to see yourself as capable. Each time you honor your word, you strengthen the bond you have with yourself. That's what real confidence is, not the absence of fear, but the presence of trust. The reason insecurity destroys so many lives is that it convinces people to wait until they feel confident before they act. But confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. The more you do, the more you grow. The more you grow, the more you trust yourself. Waiting to feel ready is just another form of procrastination. No one ever feels completely prepared, and that's what makes the act of starting so powerful. Every confident person you admire once began as someone uncertain but willing. They didn't wait for courage to appear. They built it through movement, through mistakes, through persistence. Confidence also means accepting that not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. When you stop seeking universal approval, you become free. You stop adjusting yourself to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. Confidence allows you to walk away without resentment, to say no without guilt, to stand alone without fear. It's a quiet realization that your peace is more important than your popularity, that being true to yourself is more valuable than being liked by everyone else. Insecurity tries to convince you that you must earn your worth, that you must constantly prove your value to deserve love, respect, and success. But confidence knows better. Confidence understands that worth isn't something you chase, it's something you remember. You were born with it. You don't need achievements to validate it or comparisons to measure it. When you realize that your value is inherent, that your existence is already proof of enoughness, you stop running from yourself and start returning to yourself. And that quiet return, that moment you choose to believe in your own strength without evidence, is the point where life begins to open in ways insecurity could never imagine. The moment you stop comparing, you start growing. Comparison is the silent thief of peace, the quiet destroyer of potential. It makes you forget who you are by making you obsessed with who you're not. It takes your focus away from your progress and directs it toward someone else's path, and before long, you start living your life like a race that was never meant to be run. You look at what others have accomplished and feel small, not realizing that the only reason their life looks better is because you're viewing it through the lens of your own insecurity. Every person you envy is carrying battles you cannot see, doubts they never speak of, fears they hide behind confidence. No one is as put together as they appear, and yet insecurity convinces you that everyone else has it figured out except you. Comparison is dangerous because it distorts truth. It makes you believe you're behind when you're not. It tricks you into thinking you're failing when you're simply evolving at your own pace. You begin to chase someone else's version of success, and in doing so, you abandon your own. The energy that could have been spent building your dreams gets wasted trying to measure up to someone else's. You start to mimic instead of create, to follow instead of lead, to imitate instead of express, and that's how insecurity slowly kills originality, not through failure, but through imitation. You can't become your best self while trying to be someone else. Growth begins when you turn inward, when you stop asking how far others have gone and start asking how much better you can become than you were yesterday. You start to realize that progress isn't about pace, it's about direction. It doesn't matter if you move slower than others as long as you're moving forward. Every step you take in alignment with who you truly are adds more value to your life than 100 steps taken in imitation of someone else. The world doesn't need another version of someone already known. It needs the one version of you that exists nowhere else. When you stop comparing, you begin to see that what you thought were weaknesses might actually be your greatest gifts. The traits you once hid to fit in are often the exact ones that make you stand out. Insecurity teaches you to smooth your edges, to be agreeable, to blend in. But purpose requires the opposite. It requires you to be distinct, to be bold, to embrace the parts of yourself that make you different. The more you accept those differences, the more confidence begins to replace insecurity. You no longer seek permission to exist as yourself because you finally understand that being you is your purpose. The moment you start living authentically, life begins to shift in subtle but powerful ways. The right opportunities begin to find you because you're no longer trying to be someone you're not. The right people begin to notice you because authenticity is magnetic. It attracts what's meant for you and repels what isn't. You stop chasing approval and start attracting alignment, and the peace that comes from living this way is unlike anything external validation could ever provide. The truth is, life doesn't respond to insecurity, it responds to certainty. The universe doesn't move for the one who doubts, it moves for the one who decides. When you decide that you are enough, that your timing is perfect, that your path is valid, everything begins to flow differently. You no longer operate from desperation, but from direction. You begin to trust that everything you need is already within you, waiting to be developed through courage and persistence. And with every moment you live from that belief, insecurity fades a little more, comparison loses its grip, and confidence becomes your natural state.